Welcome to the DX Today podcast, where you get facts and no hype. I'm Ryan, and joining me today is Chloe.
Thanks, Ryan. We're diving into a fascinating shift in the tech world today, something that sounds more like a high-stakes chess match than a standard hiring trend. We're talking about Google's Boomerang strategy.
It's a compelling story of what we're calling the Great Return. For the last few years, the narrative has been about Google losing its best and brightest to startups like OpenAI and Anthropic. But the data from late 2025 tells a different story. Chloe, you've been looking at the numbers. How significant is the shift?
It's massive, Ryan. According to internal data confirmed by Google leadership and reported by CNBC, 20% of Google's new AI-focused software engineering hires in 2025 were actually former employees. 1 in 5. That's a boomerang rate that has caught the entire industry by surprise.
That's a sharp reversal from the Code Red era. Let's set the stage for our listeners. If we go back to late 2022, the launch of ChatGPT was basically a seismic event for Google.
Exactly. The attention is all you need paper, which essentially laid the groundwork for modern LLMs, was written by 8 researchers at Google. And by early 2024, almost all of them had left. They went to found companies like acqui-hire, Character.ai, and Anthropic. It looked like a total brain drain.
It was. Google's response was the merger of Google Brain and DeepMind into a single unit, Google DeepMind, led by Demis Hassabis. But the real story isn't just that they consolidated, it's how they spent 2024 and 2025 aggressively hunting that talent back.
Right, and it wasn't just about the money. I mean, the money is there, but there are 3 specific drivers here that I want to break down. The first one is what John Casey, Google's head of compensation, calls infrastructure envy.
Interesting term. Let's break that down. What does that actually mean for a top-tier researcher?
Think about the scale of a trillion parameter model. To train something like that, you need an incredible amount of compute. Most startups, even well-funded ones, are struggling with the fundraising treadmill just to pay their cloud bills. Google has its own TPU, Tensor Processing Unit, clusters. These are custom-built chips specifically for AI. Researchers are realizing that if they want to build the next Gemini, they need the oil of the 21st century, Google's physical infrastructure.
So it's a hardware play. But what about the culture? That was the big complaint, wasn't it? That Google was too slow, too big company flavored?
That was the second driver, cultural flattening. This is a detail that shouldn't be overlooked. Google reportedly cut about 1/3 of its middle management roles. The goal was to reduce the bureaucracy that drove people away in the first place. They wanted to increase shipping speed. Returning employees are finding a company that looks a lot more like a lean startup than the Google they left in 2021.
I can see how that would appeal to a founder who's tired of managing HR and fundraising and just wants to get back to the code. But there's also the stability factor, right? ADP research noted a broader 35% boomerang rate across tech in 2025.
Yes, the startup bubble has definitely cooled. The burn rates are high, and the exit paths for smaller AI startups are getting narrower due to regulatory scrutiny. Google is essentially a safe harbor now.
Speaking of regulatory scrutiny, we have to talk about the most high-profile case of this boomerang trend. It's the $2.7 billion homecoming.
You're talking about Noam Shazeer and Daniel de Freitas.
Exactly. This is one of the most unique deals in corporate history. Shazeer left Google in 2021 because they wouldn't release the chatbot he was working on. He founded Character.ai, it became a massive success, and then in August 2024, Google did the reverse acqui-hire.
Let's pause there, because that $2.7 billion figure is mind-boggling. They didn't technically buy Character.ai, right?
No, and that's the no-hype technical detail. To avoid the Department of Justice and antitrust hurdles that come with a full acquisition, Google paid Character.ai a licensing fee for their technology. But the real asset in that deal was getting Shazeer and de Freitas back into the building. Shazeer is now a technical co-lead on Gemini, working alongside Jeff Dean.
It's a talent scoop. It's basically paying billions to fix a mistake from 3 years ago, but it worked. Shazeer is one of the original transformer architects. Having him back on Gemini 3 is a massive win for Google's technical roadmap.
It's not just Google, though. The competitive landscape is becoming, well, extreme is the only word for it. Chloe, what are you seeing with Meta and Microsoft?
It's a full-on talent war. Mark Zuckerberg has reportedly been personally emailing Google researchers. We're hearing reports of signing bonuses reaching $100 million at Meta for top-tier experts.
$100 million just to sign?
It sounds like a professional sports league at this point, and Microsoft is doing something similar to Google's Character.ai deal. They paid $650 million to license Inflection AI and essentially hired their entire staff, including Mustafa Suleyman, who, ironically, was a co-founder of DeepMind. It's a massive game of musical chairs.
And the chairs are becoming very expensive. But let's look at the broader economic outlook here. Signal Fire's 2025 State of Tech Talent Report has some pretty sobering numbers for the rest of the workforce.
It does. While these AI superstars are getting $100 million offers, entry-level hiring in tech has collapsed by 25 to 50%. The industry doesn't want potential right now. It wants battle-tested expertise.
That's a crucial distinction, the experience paradox. If you haven't already shipped a large-scale model, your value in this 2025 market is dropping. But if you have, you're the most valuable asset on the planet.
Which is why the Boomerang strategy is so efficient for Google. Think about the 12,000 employees Google laid off in 2023. Those alumni already know the internal tooling. They know how the monorepo works. They don't need 6 months of onboarding. They can hit the ground running on Gemini 3 on day one.
It's a just-in-time talent strategy. Lay them off when you're pivoting and then hire back the specific specialist you need when the infrastructure is ready.
It's efficient, but it does raise some questions about the long-term culture. I mean, Ryan, if you're a loyal employee who stayed through the code red, how do you feel when the person who left to start a rival company comes back with $1 billion licensing deal?
That's the friction point. But according to people like Sergey Brin, who has reportedly taken a very hands-on role in these rehirings, the goal is AI at all costs. The internal sentiment seems to be that getting Shazeer back puts Google ahead of OpenAI. The price tag and the hurt feelings are just the cost of doing business.
It's also interesting to see how the reverse acqui-hire model is being watched by regulators. The Wall Street Journal and Reuters have both noted that U.S. senators are calling for investigations into these talent poaching deals. They see it as a way for big tech to kill competition without actually filing merger paperwork.
Right. If you take the founders and the best engineers, the startup that's left behind is just a shell. It's an acquisition in everything but name.
Exactly. And for the investors in those startups, like the ones in ADAP or Inflection, they're being reimbursed, but they aren't getting the moonshot exit they hoped for. The talent is just migrating back to the mothership.
So looking ahead to the rest of 2025 and into 2026, what's the takeaway here? Is the era of the AI startup over?
Not over, but the new talent paradigm is definitely more consolidated. The Great Return suggests that scale is winning. If you need 50,000 H100s or the latest TPUs to compete, you're eventually going to have to partner with or return to the giants. Google's 20% Boomerang rate is a signal that the physicality of AI, the hardware, is becoming just as important as the code.
It's a return to the big iron days of computing in a way. The new oil is compute, and Google has the biggest refineries.
Well put. And as long as that's true, the Boomerang trend likely won't slow down. Google's alumni network is essentially their primary recruiting pipeline now.
It's a fascinating cycle, from code red to a $2.7 billion welcome home. Chloe, thanks for breaking down these numbers with me.
Anytime, Ryan. It's a wild time to be watching the tech space.
It certainly is. To our listeners, we've covered a lot of ground today, from TPU clusters to the strategic flattening of Google's management. For the full list of sources, including the CNBC reports and Signal Fire's talent analysis, check our show notes.
And stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll look at whether Meta's $100 million bonuses are actually sustainable.
Thanks for joining us on the DX Today podcast. We'll see you next time.